poem back home. خشت اول چون نهد معمار کج تا سرایا می رود دیوار کج. Do you do masonry? No. Do you do framing? Doesn't matter. That if the first brick that you lay is not level, it doesn't matter how high your wall goes, it'll eventually fall because the first brick is not level, it's crooked. So when it comes to careers, it's very much the same way. And if you go back to our story about the prodigal son, since all of us are young and new to life, we have no choice but to make mistakes, we have no choice but to be contaminated by regret and eventually repent. So it matters very little what you want to choose. Your brick is not level. So there you have it. Yes?
How do you make the right mistakes? And what mistakes are right to make?
All mistakes are good as long as you know how to process them. If you don't have teeth, doesn't matter. If you do have teeth, that's a different story. And you will learn to, depending on what the mistake or what the event is that creates a set of negative emotions, if over a course of time you're able to grow teeth and then look at the mistake and deal with the emotions that it creates, then eventually you'll get it. If not, you'll just suffer. Kendra? Sigmund Freud, along with a great many other thinkers, past, present, and no doubt future. Hello, Michelle. Julie? He had argued that, and it may be true of biology, that's just the way the evolution worked, that there is something inside us. It's like a bumper you have on a car. That without this bumper, if you were to get into an accident, your car would just fold and the occupants would just die. But one of the things that protects you from perhaps feeling the accident a bit too much is the bumpers. All of us in this class have buffers. That just in case you have an idea coming your way that is uncommon, that goes against the grain, for example, you will find all sorts of excuses to combat it and eventually make it sound evil. Confronting anything, especially if what you're confronting has elements of truth and honesty and sincerity in it, it's very, very, very difficult because it goes against some of the social components that live inside us. Being socialized means to conform. To conform means to kind of go along with what everybody else does. In this class, for example, all of us have been socialized. Just in case you have a question, you raise your hand. But if you haven't been socialized well, what happens is you just talk out of turn, you act like a savage, and eventually society will not accept such behavior, so you'll get chewed and then tossed out. Now, it may be that I've said a lot of unsavory things, for example. Okay, but what are you going to do? You're going to what? Tell me to my face that I'm an idiot? And let's just say, for example, that I also know that I'm an idiot. Confronting that truth for me would be very difficult. Add to the fact that we have one of the 7 deadly sins inside us, which is pride. All of us in this class assume to be right. And so when anyone tells us otherwise, that's a huge thing to confront. And even if at times we may find ourselves to be completely incompetent, the truth of it is far too devastating. I mean, consider someone who's been in a string of relationships, and they're now, I don't know, 50, 60, or 30, or 40, whatever the case may be. And you ask them, so are you in a relationship? No, I'm single. Well, why the hell are you single? You're like, almost dead. And confronting the fact that, well, you are single because you're an idiot, because you don't really know how to be in a relationship. There are some glitches in your software that you need to take care of. But to be able to see those glitches, you have to deal with the emotions. You have to go back in time and figure out what things you have to fix. And that's very, very difficult. Remember, knowing something is very different than being able to change. You may know that you're a creep, but to change the fact that you're a creep into something different, you need tools, you need resources. Some years ago when I moved into this place, I realized that it's really, really old, and everything about the house is just broken. So the first thing I did, I went to Home Depot and I spent a few $1,000s just buying things. So just in case something about the house goes wrong, and since I'm pretty handy, I'll just fix it. But just when something goes wrong and you know that thing is not working, but you don't have the tools, well, you're stuck. So, it's something I've always said in this class in the past 5 weeks, that it's always best for someone who likes you to tell you what things are wrong with you. But it's not enough for that person to tell you what things are wrong with you. They must also possess the tools to give you a support system, to give you some tools to fix it. That usually takes a while, because to be able to use any new tools, first you need to kind of figure out what this tool is all about, how you can use it. You're going to make some mistakes, and then you may kind of just give up. That just adds more to your dilemma. Your confidence goes down. But going back to your original question, why is it that all of us have difficulty confronting something very real about us? Because it hurts. It's far too painful. And as you age, it becomes much more devastating. My father, I saw him this past weekend, and they're coming over this weekend. He's almost 90-some. He's frail. He's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so this past weekend I tried to open the conversation about death, but it's too difficult, and rightly so. How could you expect, especially in a culture where you don't talk about these things? It's not like, South America where you can talk about death openly. And so all of a sudden I see my mom frowning a little, then my sister beginning to laugh. That's what she does when she gets nervous. And then my father sarcastically just brushes me off. I understand, So, and it's something that eventually someone needs to talk about in our family, because they are getting old. But confronting the ending of anything is very, very difficult. So we always have a tendency of postponing it. But all that aside, we have buffers. They help us not feel things too much. Sometimes some of you in this class ask questions, and it makes me wonder, where the hell did this question come from? That's not really your question. And my feeling is, okay, you take some of these ideas home, and you speak about these ideas to your friends, maybe you think about them, and then these people kind of exploit, manipulate, because you want to be, to some extent, you want to have a support system. And you can't do this on your own. The ideas and the feelings are far too much. It's too burdensome. So you want someone to release some of this tension. And the way it releases the tension is by people telling you the things that you need to hear that will create doubt and fear and uncertainty. And then all that pressure that you once felt, gets released, and your approach to ideas are not as intense or strong anymore. That's what we do. We do it all the time. You have to be very, very, very strong to kind of be able to confront anything that has depth and substance. Again, I know you weren't here last night when we talked about the prodigal son, but I'm sure you know the story well because you teach this stuff on campus. It's difficult to accept the fact that you're young and stupid. There is nothing wrong with being young, and there is nothing wrong with being stupid. It just goes with the territory. But to be told that you're stupid, maybe someone should say it in a different way, season it up a little bit so it doesn't hurt that much. And even when you do make mistakes and you catch yourself having made mistakes, it's difficult to accept. The Americans have this stupid way about them. It's my life. Okay, fuck you then. You can't teach these people anything. And the truth is, it's not just your life. What you do with your life impacts your mom, impacts your dad, impacts the kids, impacts the friends, impacts your companion, impacts the classroom. So, no boyfriend, right? Good job. Anyone else? William? Florida was good?
It was, yeah. Actually, it was okay, but everything was as expected. Totally miserable.
That's it? No other questions? Really? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Okay.
Could you talk about the process that creates spite in a person? Spite.
Spite? No, I wouldn't know. If you consider your emotions to be a body, when you walk and you feel that your knee is hurting, you sit and massage it. You try to figure out what's wrong with it. So since spite, since envy, jealousy, anger, these are all emotions. And imagine the set of emotions to belong to a body. Just in case you feel spite or envy or jealousy, what you need to do is you need to kind of sit down and massage it, figure out what the hell is wrong with it. All these questions, really, what they require is someone to sit back, look at the question, observe, and if they're able to confront all the emotions that arise from their observation, and then figure out what tools they need once it's processed to work with those emotions and hopefully to understand them. The thing you need to understand is all these emotions are because you live in your body and your body belongs to this place. Other people have power over you. You have no choice but to look at someone and see them as better looking than you, more interesting than you. You also have no choice but to once in a while feel your own incompetence. You have also no choice but to realize that there are certain things that you just don't know, but you do want to know, that you don't have the tools. All these things create a set of emotions. So you can't just get to know yourself. You have to get to know yourself within the context or the space, the physical space in which you live. They all go hand in hand. It's a full circle. You can't understand emotions without understanding capitalism and the sort of fears and anxiety and confusion it creates. You can't understand loneliness without understanding the social structure. You can't understand anger if you don't examine what your parents have done to you. You really need an like an umbrella, what Peter Berger, the sociologist, would call the sacred canopy. That you need something like an umbrella that is able to look down and look at the whole thing in a very objective way. He didn't mean it that way, but nevertheless. It's not enough for you to simply be interested in a single emotion. It doesn't work. If you have envy, it's because you look at me and you're envious. For example, and the question is, why are you envious? Maybe you want to speak the way I do. So your envy comes from the fact that you see something you enjoy, but you can't do it. So the suggestion is go read some books. That's how you overcome it. You can't overcome it by closing your eyes, meditating, and saying Coca-Cola 50 times. William.
What makes a good man?
I don't know what makes a good man. You make it sound as if human beings are these unchanging beasts that they're born and they remain forever the same, and that's not the case. We change with experiences, we change with insights, we change when we confront something honest or dishonest about ourselves, we change when we read, we have conversations, when your wife divorces you, when you get into an accident, things happen to you. So, see, you may be a great guy. You may have read a lot of books. You may have observed a lot of things about your life, about your friends. On that particular scene, you're a great guy. Imagine now you and I are in a relationship. You have never been in a relationship. I am your first relationship. You can't be a good person in this relationship. You're new. It's like riding a bicycle for the first time. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, especially if you're hanging out with me who has some experience. I will call you on every mistake that you make, and you're going to feel crappy about yourself. But you may be good as a single man, but you may be horrible as a man in a relationship. Add to it, let's just say you and I have a bona fide relationship, we get married, and I get pregnant. You may be a great companion. You were great being single, you were great in a relationship, but you're horrible as a father. You work, 8-10 hours a day, you come home, you're frustrated, you're exhausted, you have a job you don't really like. You come home for 10 minutes of peace and quietness, and all you have is a screaming child. And then a companion is frustrated because he or she has been home all day. And instead of you being patient, you kind of go nuts. Now, let's just say that now you don't really know what's going to happen to you when you do get into a relationship. I mean, as we've mentioned this plenty of times, almost everything we do in life revolves around fantasy. You have certain fantasies about certain things, you think you can do them, only to realize later on, life reveals to you that you're really quite incompetent. You will have no idea what happens when you and I, as a married couple, go to a party, and then you realize that your friend over there keeps eyeing me and winking at me. You thought you were a good man, forgiving, compassionate, intelligent. Now you're overcome with jealousy. You don't know if you should beat him up or beat me up. And then when you go home, you say, Amir, you should sleep on the sofa. What happened to your understanding? So the point I'm trying to make is you may be good in one area of life and quite horrible in another area. But to be good, some people are just good naturally. Most of us to become proficient in any art. And whatever branch of life you want to talk about is an art form. You need to kind of figure out what this art form is, what tools it needs. Without having them, it's impossible. So as you go through different stages of life, you're confronted with new components, and it's going to take you some time to understand those components and be able to use them properly. There is also the point of luck. Some people just get lucky. There's a passage in the Quran, it's something we'll talk about tonight, that it'll be good if human beings are never tested, because they will fail. So whenever you test, whenever you're tested or challenged, confronted with something, you will no doubt fail. That's how it is.
Well, what about Job?
What about Job?
Well, he was lucky. And then
He wasn't
challenged.
lucky.
No, and then he was challenged.
Well, the thing about Job is that, first of all, there are lots of people living on this planet. For some strange reason, maybe it's just luck, God likes Job. He doesn't like you, he doesn't like me, he likes Job. But it's even more than that. It's not just God liking Job, it's also Satan liking Job. Because Satan is the guy who creates the unpleasant events. So you need to be liked by God, you need to also be liked by Satan. But there's also more. Job doesn't know his capacities. Satan knows his capacities. Maybe God knows Job's capacities, I don't really know. But what we do know is that Job thinks he's a good man. Even God thinks that Job is a good man. And then Satan comes down here and does a few naughty things. And then Job becomes very, very, very sad and angry. Mrs. Job comes about once in a while saying, why don't you curse God and die? And because he's a manly man, he says, woman, we're not in the mind of God, shut your mouth. And the book of Job is, to understand the book of Job well, you need to understand Deuteronomy, you have to understand Leviticus, the wisdom tradition, that good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people, good things never happen to bad people, and bad things never happen to good people. It's kind of like what people say. You're a mother, you've always longed to have a child, you go to a company, they give you a couple of eggs, a couple of sperms, something about you grows, 9 months later you have a son. 2 days old, he's diagnosed with cancer. And then you say, well, why me? Why this? Why that? So whenever tragedy befalls you, you begin to complain. You can't accept, it's too much. And that's what Job does, and rightly so. No one desires pain. And we don't really know how we're going to unfold in the space of pain. And it takes many, 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 many pages. God sitting back, observing that Job is falling apart, eventually comes in and says, you human beings, you suck. It's true I created you, but you suck nevertheless. And by default, that may mean that I suck. All you do is complain. You don't understand anything. You don't care to understand anything. Just complain. Why don't you just accept? Life is far too big for you to understand. Existence is far too large for you to understand. You will never comprehend it. And it's at only that stage where Job kind of pours some dirt on his head and says, okay, you give and you take away. I accept. But it takes many tragedies to ultimately create a human being like a Job. The rest of us are left alone. We have no capacities for anything. I don't know about you, at least. Maybe I should just talk about myself. Whenever I feel pain and hurt, I call my therapist. She's cute. We go in there, we have some drinks. We never talk about issues. But, just looking at her resolves my issues for a few days. But Job, he rejects all the advice given to him by his friends. He finds himself completely alone in the dark. And that's another strange thing. Wisdom, it seems, comes to Job and the rest of us only in moments of crisis, where you want to figure things out but you can't. And you get swallowed. You go deeper and deeper and deeper into darkness. And all of a sudden, without you knowing, it seems like this light turns on and you begin to see something. And then something about you calms. You know, it's like people when they go through a divorce. They lose a lot of weight, they're angry, they're anxious, they're confused. And it goes on for a long, long time. Then one morning, they just wake up and something about them just calms. They understand. Anyone else? Okay. I thought today we can talk about Islam a little bit. But before we talk about Islam, let's talk about how Muhammad, the person through whom Islam was brought forth, how such a person is created. But I'm not going to talk about Muhammad directly right now. I'm going to talk about the Beatitudes. You will find them in the Gospel of Matthew. And it's really a wonderful kind of way to understand what the spiritual process or what you need to do to attain wisdom. And it's not really up to you at all. It's not up to any one of us. And again, as always, remember, you don't have to be religious. You just have to be interested in thinking and reflecting and feeling a little bit and being able to confront and hopefully observe and process certain things. The first beatitude is blessed are those who are poor in spirit. A couple of things. I don't know how blessings come to be. As I don't know how someone can become interested in these ideas in this class. I don't know how a 20-year-old can become interested in a 50-year-old and then eventually find him or herself in love. When I was 19, I was going to Sierra College, and there was an English instructor. Her name was Glaus, I think. She's probably dead now. I was 19, she was, I don't know, 60, close to retirement. But there was just something about the way she spoke, something about the way she read literature, something about the way she expressed ideas. I would stalk her. There was something very attractive about her. And I kid you not, I just wanted to be around her. Now, other students in the class didn't really much care for her, but I was just so attracted to just everything about her. Maybe not so much her body, but the other parts. And it's such an interesting thing for a 19-year-old kid to be interested in a 60-year-old woman. But more than that, when you're young, your instinct says sex. But at the age of 19, there is something about you says, no, who cares about her body? Look at her mind. Look at the way she speaks. Look at the way she seasons ideas in such a beautiful way. So the first thing you need to know about all the 10 Beatitudes that begin with blessed are this and blessed are that is that you need to be profoundly unique. You need to be very special, either in the eyes of God or the eyes of someone who loves you or likes you to some extent. Because it is accidental. It really is. There are lots of people on this planet who go through miserable lives. But out of the many, many thousands, if not millions, one or two in the same condition is able to get themselves out. I mean, consider the life of Malcolm X. It makes no sense to me. His life makes no sense. He makes no sense to me. You know, to see your father lynch in front of you, to see your mom turn to drugs, to see your siblings go into foster care, to be a black young man in America, to go to school only to be told by your favorite teacher that because you're black you don't amount to anything, to become a thief, to get caught, to end up in prison, and all of a sudden he turns out to be a prophet for his people and for others. How are people transformed? I don't really know. So the first thing you need to understand about the Beatitude is that from somewhere unknown, from somewhere invisible, from somewhere uncommon, blessing comes about. How, why, who the hell knows? It's a mystery, and it's best to keep it as a mystery. The next aspect of the first Beatitude is poverty. None of us in this class enjoy poverty, and yet it says poverty is a blessing. I don't understand why poverty of any kind could be a blessing. For those of you in this class who have been with a man or a woman for a number of years, and all of a sudden they leave you, well, what the hell do? Do you sing? Do you rejoice? No, you sit, you mope, you cry, you lament. No one enjoys poverty because it's a stage of grief. It creates anger. Who the hell enjoys poverty? Poverty means lack. Poverty means not having. And in this Beatitude, it says that if you don't have, and if you know you don't have, consider yourself to be blessed. Your grief is a blessing. Your sadness is a blessing. Your anger is a blessing. But what kind of a poverty must you have? Well, you have to have poverty in your spirit, not emotions. If you are sick, yes, you have poverty in your physical health. If you went to a coffee shop and you looked at someone and they inspired you, that particular emotion is caused by your physical body being in a coffee shop, being inspired by someone else. Intellectual poverty. What exactly do we use our brains for, really? To figure out what classes we should take, how we should be with our companion. What is a good man? What is the difference between, what was it that he said? Some ridiculous thing. What is dogma? And you realize our brain is usually utilized to figure out our physical life, our emotional life that's the outcome of our physical life. We suffer from all these three areas, poverties: physical poverty, emotional poverty, intellectual poverty. But this is a very unique poverty to have. That your spirit is poor. That yes, you are healthy, but you're not happy. You took your sorry ass to Florida to have fun. For some strange reason, your emotions would give you laughter, excitement for 10 minutes, and then you would fall back into misery. And then you would ask yourself, okay, well, I'm not having fun at the beach. Maybe I should go to a bar. Well, I'm not having fun at the bar. Maybe I should go see Mission Impossible 7, maybe 5 times in one day. This particular poverty is, physically you're okay, emotionally you're okay, intellectually you're okay. But you're just not completely content. That you want something more, you want something different. Now, the problem with spiritual poverty is that it's not reachable with our senses. You can't get to read a book and figure out what your spirit is. And it's a horrible place to be. You go to school, you you get degrees, you make money, you buy a house, you get married, you have children, only to realize you're still a piece of shit. And you don't know why. To go through life amassing all this wealth, physical, emotional, intellectual, only to realize it's just not enough. And then you say, I want to figure out who I am. All the things that you thought you were lived on the outside, but now for the first time, something about you says, what's within? Do you have a soul? Is there a spirit inside you? Why do you feel so empty? Now, it's very difficult to look at your house and not find it to be a home. It's very difficult to look at your husband, or to look at your wife and not see them as your companions. It's very difficult to look at your children and not feel that you're a father or a mother. Because now your suffering is very, very different. You're sick in your soul. So you're going to be confronted with a good amount of anger and resentment and envy. You're going to blame other people. You're going to blame yourself for getting married, for having children, for going to school for the wrong reasons. Eventually coming to realize perhaps all of life has been a mistake. Now, what happens once you become very intimate, and remember, whenever grief takes place, whenever you feel as if you have lost something or you're missing something, the buffers come forth. They want to lessen the pain. You will want to distract yourself. You will desire to sabotage all the things you feel and think about. You're at a different place in life, and this different place is unknown to you. It's mysterious. It's not comforting at all. It creates a great amount of unpleasant emotions within you. So you will do whatever you can to run away. But if you're blessed enough, and if you have the capacity to stay in this pain, in this sorrow, that you know that something about you is missing, but you don't know what, but you can't get rid of it. What happens is you enter the second beatitude, and I'm going to change the orders. And it's blessed are those who mourn. They're very, very sad. You've suffered a great loss. You thought that your path in life was the right one, only to realize it is not. You have lost your history. You have lost your psychological narratives. You have lost your identity. You will mourn. You will be sad. You will grieve. But it's not just grieving with sorrow and sadness. There's a good amount of disappointment and anger and resentment and envy. You want to go back and be like other people, you know. But that world has been lost to you. Now, if you have been simmered and seasoned, and if you haven't forgotten that, you know, your path is really to figure out who your spirit is, who your soul is. If those are two religious of terms, just change them with creativity. Whatever you're creative in, music, poetry, doesn't really matter. So for those of you who are allergic, just change the words. Doesn't make much of a difference. Once you have stayed focused and you have the capacity to stay very much like Job, demanding justice, why is this happening to you? And you don't seek therapy, you don't talk to your friends about it. You demand answers from only one person. You used to be an atheist, but now you raise your head and fist towards heaven and you say, I need answers, God damn it. I did all the things that, you know, society asked me to do. I went to school, I paid my taxes, I got married, I'm good to my parents, I'm good to my kids, I'm good to my wife or husband, and yet my life sucks, and I demand to know why. And and remember again, mourning is a blessing. Loss is a blessing. Grief is a blessing. It's a very strange thing. So the third beatitude is the following. Blessed are those who thirst and hunger. I I drink coffee because I'm bored, not because I'm thirsty. And I eat food, not because I'm hungry. It's a ritual, you know. It's 12, it's noon. I have to eat. But to be thirsty, to have done a good amount of work, to be hungry, and so, even though these things are unpleasant for the human organism, what we have in the Gospel of Matthew is that these are really blessings that come our way. Not all of us, some of us. Now, you know what happens when you're thirsty and you drink some water? You forget that you were thirsty. When you're hungry and you eat some food, you forget that you were starving. This is a sort of thirst and hunger that can't be forgotten. They need to be with you all the time. Thirst and hunger put you in sadness, put you in misery, put you in pain. You will be in constant mourning, like something has died, and you remember its death all the time. Now, in mourning, you and I break down. In mourning or in grief, barriers are removed. There are no more buffers. Your PhD is not going to help you. Your boyfriend is not going to help you. How you look is not going to help you. None of those things will help you. You have no barriers. And in mourning and in grief, you enter the fourth beatitude. Blessed are the pure-hearted. All the crap that lives inside our consciousness, ourselves, the social stuff, the political stuff, our own fantasies, our own experiences, they're all removed. And I'm not really quite sure what the pure heart looks like. Okay? And it doesn't really matter. All of us in this class know that when something about you just gets broken, if you do something that 2-year-olds do, you cry, and you have no shame in crying. Now, when life is removed from your interior, for the first time you experience the fifth or the sixth beatitude, which is humility. Blessed are the meek. So what you have is, you hunger for your spirit, you thirst for your spirit. Life and all of its occupants can't really nourish you. You go into mourning. And in mourning, you realize your life has turned out like Noah. Flood has come about, everything has disappeared, it's only you and you alone. All of a sudden there's a breakthrough. Once your heart is pure, you will see certain glimpses into your own self, the kingdom of God, whatever your capacity may be. You don't have to make this very fantastic, you know. It's kind of like you want to learn how to play the piano. You keep playing the same note or same score over and over and over again, and you make a lot of mistakes. And you're in love with piano, the way it sounds, the way it makes you feel. But every time you make a mistake, it saddens you. Then all of a sudden, you get the whole thing right. That's your kingdom of God. Now, once that happens, once you get a glimpse, and once you experience something that is very, very profound, that out of ordinary, you enter what in the Jewish tradition we call Sabbath. Something about you calms. You are still thirsty, but it no longer comes with pain. You're still hungry, but it no longer comes with pain. You're always mourning and in grief, but you make poetry from it. You enjoy the darkness because it gets you closer to being broken. that brokenness will push you into a prayer mode of sorts. And remember, prayer doesn't need to be religious. You can go to your room and play the guitar. You can talk on the phone with your friends and have intimate conversations about life and meaning and all that. Okay. Now, once you become a peacemaker, now you make peace within, and then on the outside, you want to share that with the people close to you, kind of like the Gospel of Matthew, and people who are not in your space, that's the Gospel of Luke. But then you realize something really, really interesting, and that's the last beatitude, which is people don't like to be told who they are and what they are, the sort of scumbags they've turned into. And very much like Plato's allegory of the cave, the man who steps out and says to himself, maybe I should go back into the cave and tell my people that there is a sun out there. They don't need to be entertained by the ridiculous shadows on the wall. He assumes that people will enjoy what he has to share with them, only to realize they really want to grab him and kill him. And so when you look at some of the heroes of humanity, such as Malcolm X, such as Martin Luther King Jr., such as Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Confucius, Moses, Jesus, even Gilgamesh, what they all have in common is that because they told us how wretched of animals they are, we just took their ideas and put them in books. And then you go to school, you read them, you get a degree, and you come to class and you talk about them. Just crucifying them, just in a different way.